Welcome to Arizona Bill Watch, the show where you get satisfaction if you're not getting it from your state legislators. We report and comment on what happens at the state legislature and alert you on what is coming up next. And now, here are the hosts of Arizona Bill Watch, Jose and Archie.
Hello everyone, welcome to Arizona Bill Watch, the show that gives you satisfaction if you're not getting it from your state legislators. We do it by discussing important and controversial bills. I am your host, Jose Borajero, and I am here with co-host Archie Dixon. There's a lot going on at the Capitol, so stay tuned because we have a fantastic show for you today. Senate Bill SB 1783. Short title, Small Businesses Alternate Income Tax. This bill was introduced by Senator Mesnard, and it is quite a complicated bill, but it has some provisions in it which are really necessary. The main thing to remember about this bill, Archie, is that it provides an alternative way for small businesses to be taxed. Okay? And it is a convoluted and it's difficult, and I'm not sure that I understand 100% of it. Okay?
I know I don't, but I do understand some of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but the idea is that you can be taxed, if you have a small business, you can be taxed in a separate manner than you are being taxed now. Most of these are either single proprietorships or or some of them are corporations. But the bottom line is that if you choose to be taxed as a small business, and they have a definition of small business in here, your tax would be 4.5% of the small business taxable income. So whatever that small business taxable income is, and you derive that actually from when you do the federal tax. So anyway, it's 4.5% that you pay, and it seems like it is going to be a flat rate, no matter what. Now, normally there would not be a whole lot of opposition to this bill, okay? Mm-hmm. But it so happens that when you do this, then the surcharge that Proposition 208 is putting on personal income would not apply to this. And that's where the problem comes in. The problem not for me, maybe not for you either,
Probably not, yeah.
but a problem for the proponents of Proposition 208, because as it turns out, they fully intended for that proposition to tax small businesses, even though they said, no, it doesn't tax small business, no, it doesn't, and they sold it to the public on that basis. It actually would have. Otherwise, why would they be opposed to it when this bill would not tax small businesses? So if you're a proponent of Prop 208 and you say, look, it will not tax business, and I say, okay, fine, we're going to put it in writing that we're not going to tax small businesses. And now you're going to object to that because you're going around the proposition?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make any sense. So what it is that it's further proof that they lied to us when they promoted Proposition 208. It's that simple. And it's not, let's see, it has been assigned, the last I checked, now this may have changed since this morning when I checked, okay? But the last I checked this morning was that it had been assigned to the House Ways and Means Committee. It passed the Senate, of course, and it has been assigned to the House Ways and Means Committee, but as far as I could tell, it has not been scheduled for a hearing just yet. So we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. But if it does come up, I would recommend voting yes on it because it does provide an escape for small businesses, which, by the way, these small businesses are the ones that really have been hit by this COVID thing.
They are.
Okay, if you're at McDonald's, mm-hmm. Or some of these big outfits, Home Depot or whatever, you can absorb all this nonsense.
You can.
But if you're a small restaurant or a small machine shop, you're dead. You're dead in the water because you cannot do business properly. So this would be a long ways to reviving small businesses in the state. So I'm in favor of it, but I don't know, Archie. You never know with Archie, guys.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I tell you, yeah.
Well, yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Uh-huh,
He may not agree with me. So what's your take on it, Archie?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what a small business is.
Well, actually, the federal government defines that when you file you can file, apparently, I didn't know this, folks, but reading this bill, it appears that you can have a small business designation when you file your federal tax. And that's what they use for determining what a small business is over here.
I understand, but I mean, it's not terribly clear in this bill.
Come
And-
on,
and
Archie. Nothing is terribly clear when it comes to these bills.
I understand that, and Jose, I don't know how many times I have told you, and I'll tell you again, that I really think we need to limit they can only introduce 3 bills, right? Then maybe they'll give some thought to how they're putting the wording together on some of these bills.
Well, look,
But the definition, as they have set forth, a small business taxpayer means any individual, all right? Well, if I'm an individual, how can I be a business, all right? Who reports on the taxpayer's federal income tax return, any income that constitutes Arizona small business gross income. So now we're right back to what is a small business, all right? So now I go to, if we look at Title 43, Section 1126, it defines what a small business corporation is, but it doesn't define what a small business individual is, all right? Now, small businesses have been defined in various aspects as any company, any business that has fewer than 500 employees, all right? Is that what's a small business here? I don't really know. Now, I understand too that a distinction is that for every other thing under the tax code in the state of Arizona, you have a scalable tax imposed upon you, all right? And that tax imposed upon you starts at 2.59% and works its way up to 4.5%. Now, under this bill, the minimum tax is 4.5%.
And the maximum, it's fixed at 4.5.
That's right, it's fixed at 4.5%. So if you would be better off as an individual filing and getting the lower tax rate, this says if you're gonna file as a small business, you're gonna pay 4.5%, period.
But keep in mind that you have the choice. This is not forced. You can file as it used to be, or you can file as the new, as under this bill. So it's optional.
Here's another question for you. You and I are operating a restaurant.
No, not me. I would never.
Okay?
But let's for
You
the
can
sake of
file-
argument.
You can file as an individual.
Okay.
Can I then file as a small business under this? So I get taxed at 4.5%, you get taxed at...
I know a very good accountant.
well, I know a few good accountants, too.
And that's not me. So I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Well, I really, it's unclear. It's
Yeah,
unclear.
no.
They need to clarify it.
Yeah, it would be-
And the only purpose I see for this is to get somebody to be gullible and create more revenue for the state, so that instead of paying 2.59% on tax, you're going to pay 4.5%.
Believe you me, if you have an accountant that has, it's worth anything, he would advise you as to which is the better way to go.
Oh, I'm sure of that. I'm sure of that.
And again, this would not have been a big problem if it hadn't been because the folks that sponsored 208.
I agree with that also, yeah.
Are up in arms because according to them, this is going to gut their proposition or their bill. And the only way that this could happen is if they intended for additional business taxing to take place, and they claim that they wouldn't.
We should be so lucky that 2.8 is gutted.
Well, but it's not going to happen. There's still litigation going on there.
I know.
Anyway,
Yep.
my take on that is that I would vote yes on it.
I would too, reluctantly.
Yeah. House Bill HB 2569. Short title, Elections, Private Funding, Prohibition. This bill was introduced by Representative Huffman. It has cleared the House, of course, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it. It will be in the Senate Government Committee, and that would be on the 15th, which I believe it's Monday, isn't it? Monday the 15th?
15th, yeah, 12.
Yeah, I think that's
Yes,
Monday.
Monday,
Anyway, this bill, whenever a bill starts with notwithstanding X, it's a red flag, okay? And this one says notwithstanding any other law. But in this case, it's a good one. I like what it does. Because, and then let me read on. Notwithstanding any other law, this state and city, town, county, school district, et cetera, that conducts or administers elections may not receive or expend private monies for preparing, for administering, or conducting an election, including registering voters. What it is, again, whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea in the end, this is. What do you? Am I anticipating that you will be opposed to this?
Yeah.
Regardless, this is a reaction to what happened in recent elections that really have gotten out of hand with all of this outside money coming in and trying to influence our elections. Whether it was legal or not is not the point. Whether it was fraud or not is not the point. The point is that it's not appropriate for these monies to be used for electioneering. But anyway, that's the bill. It's going to be in the Senate Government Committee on Monday. And my suggestion on that one is that people call their Senate Government Committee members and express a positive vote on this bill. And apparently Archie does not quite agree with me.
No, I do.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
I do.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out, though, what exactly this bill has to do with election integrity. I mean, as you all know, we have a real problem in this last election with whether or not the election was fair, whether it was properly conducted. And all this one does is say you can't use personal funds in order to run the election. Okay, so, but that had nothing to do with election integrity as I see it. So other than that, I think it's a good bill.
House Bill HB 2862. Short title, Schools, Instructional Time Models. This bill has passed the House, and it's scheduled for a committee hearing in the Senate Education Committee on Monday. It was introduced by Representative Udall, and what this bill does is that it makes a lot of changes as to how schools conduct their business. None of it good, in my book anyway. But then again, we're used to that. When we see Udall, it's a red flag. Let me mention to you a little bit as to what the summary says about it. Allows a school district or charter school to adopt an instructional time model that permits the school to deliver annual required instructional time of hours through specified modes. Now, if we can translate that to English, is that you can throw away everything and they can do whatever they want. That's pretty much what the bill does. And it's not a good idea because you need that guidance. Some of the things that happen within the bill, and it's a long bill, it's several pages long.
Yeah, 15 pages.
Yeah, so we're not gonna, we don't have enough time to get into this if it would stay until tomorrow. But let me hit some of the highlights, some of the things that I don't like about this bill. Well, first of all, the minimal annual instructional time is changed, okay? They now can change the determination of the daily attendance. The student count can be changed by the school boards. Any other purpose relating to instructional time or hours. Another thing, in order to satisfy any time, it may be satisfied in any manner prescribed in the school's instructional time model. Now, here's when it gets interesting. allows a school, if it's adopted, the annual required instructional time can be any combination of these. And, okay, A, direct instruction. Okay, fine. You know, the time that kids spend in school with direct instruction, nothing wrong with that, is there?
Nope.
Nope. B, project-based learning. Now remember, it can be any combination thereof. So as far as the rule says here, it can be 100%, technically, it can be 100% project-based learning. What is project-based learning?
I don't have a finished idea.
Neither do I, and I don't think most legislators know it either. I'm not so sure that you don't know it either. But anyway, C, independent learning time. Independent learning time. I would assume that that means that the kid is really reading something and the teacher is not involved.
That would be my thoughts on it.
But I don't know. And then D, the fourth one, mastery-based learning. Now that one they they define, but the definition doesn't make any sense. I didn't understand. After reading the definition, I still don't know what mastery-based learning means.
I understand that one.
Oh, you understand that one? Well, you're ahead of me, which is not unusual. He's ahead of me quite a few times when it comes to reading these things. But anyway, now, there's another part of this bill that is really bad, and that is that it limits the amount of instructional time in the school can provide in a remote setting. And so far, so good. You can limit how much you can do on a remote setting. In other words, that means not in the school. That means like internet or whatever.
Like what we've been doing in 2020.
Okay.
That's
So
why this is a
it
bad
sets a
bill.
limit, folks. Okay, but let's read a little further. And we read a little further. So what's the limit? During school year 21-22, up to 50%, 50% of total instructional time, and beginning in the year 2022 and thereafter, they reduce it to 40%. All right. Now, what that means is that, and let's see if I can find where it actually says that. I can't find it right away, but what that means is that they can do up to 50% remote training without affecting the funding. And
Or the
then,
number of teachers they have, or the teachers' salaries, none of this, affects them.
no.
Just affects the
you
student
get- you-
who's getting an inferior education, that's all. it
Right,
is.
but you still get the same money. You and I, folks, pay the same amount. Actually more, because every year they want more. But the kids are getting less education. And it's almost laughable that in the first year it's 50%, and then they reduce it to 40%, as though that's a big deal. So this bill is bad all the way around. But it passed the House, and there's every evidence that it's going to sail through the Senate, and it will sign into law, and everybody will be very happy. And the kids will continue to be undereducated forever and ever and ever. And the language, here's the language that I couldn't find initially. A school may provide a remote setting without impact to the school's funding as follows. And that's where it had the 50% and then the following the 40%. And actually there's more. This bill is all over the place. This bill actually repeals ARS 15-861, and of course you guys don't know what 15-861, you have no reason to know that, but it is the statute that defines, when you have less than 5 days of instruction, if you have like 4-day classroom days, okay, it defines that you have to have the same number of hours in 4 as you would in 5. In other words, the fact that you have only 4.
Or in 3.
Or in 3.
Or in 3
For
days.
kindergarten to 4, I think it is, you can have 3 days. But this bill actually repeals that statute. So, again, it is a free-for-all for the school boards to decide whatever they want to do with the number of hours that they teach the kids, but it does not affect the funding. It's a solid, absolute, positively no with me. And
Well, Jose, I mean, I don't know how many times I have to tell you folks, if you see the name Udall on the bill, you better read it really, really, really close, because you're going to get shafted one way or another by it. Now, this bill provides that from this point on, that a student can stay at home and watch Pepe Le Pew on the computer and get credit for.
not Pepe Le Pew, he's been banned.
Well, but I mean, they're going to be getting Dr. Seuss and all of that
Oh,
kind
okay.
of stuff, you know what I mean? So they can watch all of that, and that all counts towards the education. You know, look, 2020 should have proven something to us, that students do not learn sitting at home on their computer. This is transferring in-class instruction to sitting at home working on a computer. And we also know that many students don't even have a computer. So what are they going to work on? So no, it's a bad bill, needs to be defeated, and we need to limit Miss Udall to only 3 bills a year. So maybe she can come up with something that's decent.
Senate Bill SB 1409. Short title, Zoning Ordinances, Property Right Costs. This bill, introduced by Senator Peterson of LD 12, I believe it is, it's obviously has cleared the Senate, and it would be heard in the House Government and Elections Committee on the 17th, which I believe is Wednesday. And this bill, it has to do with zoning ordinances and respecting the rights of individual landowners or property owners. And let me read to you shortly the part of the summary of this bill. Requires the legislative body of a municipality to consider and adopt an impact statement that includes specific information before adopting any zoning ordinance or zoning ordinance text, amending the general applicability. Now, that's a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo, okay, which is typical of all these bills. What does that mean in English? Okay, what that means is that, remember how you're supposed to have a environmental impact, okay, when you do something? What this is saying is that you should also have a financial impact. When you do the zoning, what does it do to the property owners of that area when you're going to change the zoning? And you have to take that into account. And in that sense, I think it's a good bill, because you may be sitting there on a piece of property and you thought it was going to generate certain income and it had certain value, and all of a sudden they rezone it, and you're out of luck. Now, I don't think that this bill provides enough protection against that, but at least it forces the issue of having an impact as to what that's going to happen, which will be the first step in possibly not doing the rezoning. We all know that the people with the most money usually win the rezoning battle. Okay? Somebody comes in from out of state with several $1 million, and they're going to win anyway. But at least this will put a little bit of an obstacle in front of them. And to that extent, I think it's a good bill.
This bill appears to be drafted, or the amendment appears to be directed, basically to real estate developers. I mean, it's something to help them along the line. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, but you and I on the house that we've got on our lots, it's not going to affect us one way or another, but it may affect what goes in, down the block from us, because of what real estate developers are doing. And as I read this bill, it's designed strictly to assist real estate developers.
Well, yeah, but not totally. It's a combination here. So anyway, the bottom line is that I kind of like this bill, and so that's what I
don't have any major heartbreak with it.
yeah, that's what I am going to recommend when I send my suggestion that you should contact the members of the House government. Now, this is a good time, I think, to do a little training here, Archie. when we suggest that you call legislators with a yes or a no or whatever, it's a good idea to pay attention to who is going to be hearing the bill. Because all the bills that we are covering here so far, it's a committee. And there's 8, 9, 10 people in the committee. No sense in sending an email or making phone calls or whatever to 60, 70, 80 legislators when only a handful are going to be looking at the bill.
Correct.
So, and that applies to this, and it applies to any time that you have a bill in a committee. When you contact legislators, you should limit your contact to those people that are going to be hearing the bill. And in this case, it happens to be the House Government and Elections Committee.
Those are the people you need to contact.
Senate Bill SB 1468. Short title, DPS Pension Liability Supplemental Appropriation. And this bill was introduced by Senator Livingston. It passed in the Senate, obviously, because it's now in the House, and it will be heard in the House Government and Elections Committee on Wednesday. Now, this is a supplemental appropriation bill. And aren't you and I know what that means. Anytime you hear supplemental appropriations, hold on to your wallet, because that's exactly where it's going. What this means is that they're going to take more money from the taxpayer in addition to what was agreed with the budget, in the budget process. In this case, they are appropriating $300 million from the State General Fund in order to bail out, actually the best word I can use is bail out, the public safety personnel retirement system with regards to the DPS. What happens is that these organizations, and I don't want to say anything bad about the cops or the DPS members. I mean, I don't want to get a ticket unnecessarily. No, seriously, they do a good job. But the problem is that we can no longer afford these defined benefit programs because there's no way that we can catch up to them. And the only way that we can put a Band-Aid on it, and this is just a Band-Aid because next year they're going to come back for more because they'll need more. As long as we keep that type of system, they're going to have these additional appropriations every so often, and it comes from your pocket and mine. That's why people like me advocate that you should have a defined contribution plan so that you contribute to the plan, and whatever the market provides for you, that's what you get. But that's not the way the unions want it. They want that guarantee, and when that happens, you and I pay for it. And this time it's going to be $300 million. Why we have to keep on doing that is beyond me, but we are doing it. I don't think that it's going to matter much what you and I say about it, Archie. I think that this is going to go through because people don't want to hurt the law enforcement personnel. But they are not being well served by the leaders. That's what I can say about it. So when it comes time to provide an opinion, I would do what I normally do in this situation. I put a question mark there and say, you got to decide whether you want to do this or not. I myself don't like the idea. On the other hand, I don't want to. The cop in the street, you don't want to penalize him, but there's no other way to fix the problem other than stop the appropriations. But when you do that, then they suffer. So you're in a catch-22 situation here.
No, you're not.
Well, okay.
No, you're really not.
Okay, well.
And this bill provides that this $300 million has to be paid in this year, in this fiscal year. So, basically that means that by around July 1st of 2021, they're going to take $300 million out of the coffers of the state, and they're going to put it into the public safety officers' pension fund. Now understand that as far as I know, all public employees' pension funds in the state of Arizona are underfunded. Some of them are grossly underfunded. Some of them are only funded to the tune of, the last figure I heard was 60%. Now, the question is why are we having this problem? And that is because the state, in their contract with the public safety officers, are not putting in enough money, and they're not requiring the employees to put in enough money. Now, the only one that I really had a chance to go into and review is the teacher's funds. Now, on a teacher's salary, the state, whatever your salary is, let's say it's $3,000 a month. Now, in addition to that $3,000 a month, the state puts in 11.5% of that amount into your retirement fund. And they require you to put in 11.5% from your salary into your retirement fund. Now, what is the amount that the public safety officers are required to put in? How much is the state required to put in? Whatever those figures are, it's not enough. Because as you can see, they're asking for an emergency $300 million out of the general coffers to go in to pay for the retirement benefits that retired public safety officers can obtain. And whenever you start looking at at the ages at which some of these people can retire and start drawing benefits, I mean, it's just a horror story, and we need to they need to address that, and this bill does not address it. And because it doesn't address it, I am totally against it. Totally against it. I don't want to hurt the public safety officers, as Hosea said, but then at some point in time, our legislature needs to address this problem and get it corrected. When they do that, then I can come back and say, okay, I approve this. But if you look at this bill, it doesn't require the public safety officers to take 1 penny out of their pocket and contribute towards their own retirement. Not to apply, why wouldn't they have to put up $300 million? And the other thing is, this special appropriations, with all of the special appropriations that other bills have included, if they pass, we're now over $1 billion in special appropriations out of our general fund. Not a good idea. I'm against it.
Yep, that's over 10% of the total that we normally spend, or that we spent last year. Senate Bill SB 1497. Short title, Ballot Measures, Proposition 105, Disclosure. This bill was introduced by Senator Eugente Rita. It has cleared the Senate, so it will be heard in the House Government and Elections Committee on Wednesday. Now, this bill, it's so obvious that I don't even see why we should need a bill to do this, but because it is common sense. What it does is that in fact, let me go ahead and read what the summary says. Requires the official ballot and the Secretary of State's SOS publicity pamphlet to include a Proposition 105 notice. Now, you guys probably don't know what a Proposition 105 notice is. Proposition 105 is one that made it so that, and this is approved by the voters, so that once you pass something via an initiative, that the legislature cannot touch it. In other words, the only way that statute can be changed, or whatever it is, statute or constitutional, whatever it is, the only way that it can be changed is by another initiative. In other words, what that means is that once you pass something, it's pretty much engraved in stone. If conditions change later, you can't change it. If you find out later that they lied to you when they were promoting it, you can't change it. So, and what this does, what this bill does is very simply says, oh, look folks, think twice, think carefully, because if you approve this thing, there's no way that you can amend it, there's no way that you can change if you made a mistake. So you got to be absolutely certain. Make sure you read the bill properly, okay? And there's a lot of objection to that because of that. Because there are people there that they don't want you to know everything that's in the proposition or what it does or whatever. but it is common sense, and I'm 100% in favor of it. Look at the proposition very carefully, and make sure that this is something that you want, and make sure that this is something that you want after conditions change, and it's something that you want regardless of what happens, because it ain't gonna change once you put it on there. And that's all I have to say about that.
Well, I'm gonna go a little further than you, and I'm going to read just exactly what the proposed amendment says. Immediately below the Legislative Council analysis, which is required to be put in an initiative or a referendum, for any statutory measure, the following statement in boldface type. Notice, pursuant to Proposition 105, passed in 1998, these measures cannot be changed in the future if approved on the ballot except by a 3/4 vote of the members of each house of the legislature, and if the change furthers the purpose of the original ballot measure, or by referring the change to the ballot. So it's the only way it can be changed. I think, if you're going to be voting on an initiative or a referendum that is going to become basically an amendment to your Constitution, that kind of thing, you need to have this information before you so that you know, look, you're talking about something major here when you vote on an initiative or a referendum. This is a good bill.
So he and I agree. Hooray!
Yeah.
Senate Bill SB 1377. Short title, Civil Liability, Public Health Pandemic. This bill was introduced by Senator Leach down in Tucson, and it will be heard in the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday. And this is actually pretty simple bill. What it does very simply, it says that you cannot take advantage of a pandemic in order to sue people and try to make money off of it simply because there was a pandemic that took place, and there are rules and regulations regarding that. The actual summary of the bill reads as follows. For civil suits resulting from damages during a pandemic-related state of emergency, the burden of proof is elevated from the customary preponderance of evidence to clear and convincing evidence. Now, let me explain what that means. Normally, and Archie knows a lot more about this than I would, but let me try to explain it. Normally, in a lawsuit, all it takes in order for the person that brings up the lawsuit is to show a preponderance of evidence that the other person did something wrong. Now, what this does is that in cases involving this pandemic and people trying to sue, say, for example, a restaurant claiming that they did not take the proper precautions or whatever, that in these cases, instead of just using a preponderance of evidence, you go to the next level, which is clear and convincing evidence. And this bill is it's aimed specifically at preventing the abuses that would likely take place because people try to make money off of it. How do you prove that that you were infected at the particular restaurant or a particular business? It's hard to prove, but regardless, the person or the business has to defend itself, and that costs money, and of course the lawyers make money, and possibly the person bringing on the suit. But the consumer ends up paying at the end because, as you know, corporations don't pay anything. Either if the insurance companies have to pay, your premiums go up, you pay. And it's that simple. So I agree that this is a good bill. And from what I could read, this applies only when there is a pandemic. I don't think it's a general law. It applies only when a pandemic has been declared. And you may want to clarify that. I don't know, but reading the bill, that's the impression that I got. So I'm in favor of it.
Good, yeah.
About yours?
Well, let's take a look at who it protects. For this purposes, there's eight entities that it protects. One is a person who furnishes consumer or business goods or services or entertainment. Okay, that's good so far. an educational institution or district, a school district or a charter school, a property owner, property manager, property lessor or lessee, whatever that might be, a nonprofit organization, a religious institution, this state or an agency or instrumentality of this state, a local government or political subdivision of this state, including a department, agency, or commission of a local government or political subdivision. So the ones that, most of the people that are being protected are government agencies. Yeah, if you and I are running a mom and pop restaurant, not so sure it protects us much.
Well, it does. They were included now. The reason why it protects the government more than it protects the business is because there's more government than business. I mean, you know, if you're gonna protect everybody, you're gonna protect the government more because we're at the state where the government has its claws on just about everything.
But the government is the one that's that's imposing limitations on you.
Well, good. It's about time we have some limitations.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the limitations that they're posing may or may not be terribly good, as you can see that everybody's fighting back against it. I don't have a problem necessarily with the bill, but I think they need to go more in trying to protect, you know, the small business owner here, that the one that's you know.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that
And
100%.
they're just, you know, it's not clear that they're doing that from
Yeah,
that.
and this is one thing, and this is one opportunity that I like to take to explain something to you folks. And that is that we are in a situation here in the state of Arizona where any bill that we introduce, any bill that we try to advance, has to be moderated. It has to be curtailed because of the political situation that we have. We have a one vote advantage in the House and one vote advantage in the Senate. That is the Republicans. And if you look at this, at the results of this bill, how the people voted, it was 100% Republican for and 100% Democrat against it. So all it takes is for one Republican to say, I don't like this bill, okay, and then the bill fails.
That's correct.
Okay? So, as a result of that, you cannot do a lot of what you should be doing. You are limited as to what you can do. And we are limited as to what we can do here. And that's what's happening. I would like to have this, have some more teeth. I would like for it to be stronger. But we cannot get it passed if we do. So we take a little bit, which is not much, but we take a little bit now that we can. And maybe later we can take another little bit. So that's the way it works, folks. We don't like it. I don't like it, but that's the reality of life. So anyway, I think we both agree that this is a good bill and deserves a yes rating from us.
Correct.
Senate Bill SB 1382. Short title, Essential Businesses, Firearms, Ammunition Sales. And this bill was introduced by Senator Rogers, and it'll be in the House Judiciary Committee on Wednesday. This bill actually is a response to things that have happened in the past. For example, we all know about the stories in when Katrina hit, you know, how the people in New Orleans, you know, they had their arms confiscated and you couldn't, a lot of restrictions. Because what happens is a lot of times these governments use the pandemic or whatever crisis you have as an excuse to advance whatever their agenda is. And what this bill intends to do, as I read it, is provide that the Second Amendment rights of individuals will not be too heavily infringed upon. They are always infringed upon every day, but that they will not be too heavily infringed upon using the pandemic as an excuse. In other words, by naming the firearms and ammunition business as essential, then you have lesser requirements as to what you do to them. They still have their restriction, but they're not quite as much as they would be with non-essential businesses. And again, and you and I have gone through this before, you know, deciding what's essential and what's not essential, you know. If I own a restaurant, you better believe that restaurant is essential to me, you know. But you may say, no, the restaurant is not essential, you know. But anyway, that's the intent. The intent is to provide a little bit of security regarding the Second Amendment, and to that extent, I think it's a good bill.
It's like the old legal saying about depends on whose ox is being gored.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if you
Exactly.
recall, Rahm Emanuel some time ago said, you never let a disaster go to waste. This is a good bill as far as it goes. It is a thing to protect our the Second Amendment, and your right to keep and bear arms and have ammunition to shoot in that arms. I mean, so yeah, it's a good idea. I just think it needs to go further and include more things as an essential business.
Yeah, well, actually, the way I would like to see it is that all businesses we considered essential. I mean, that's my default position, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So this is another one of those situations where we get what we can and hope for the best. So anyway, a good bill. Please contact the members of the House Judiciary Committee and tell them that you think that this is a good bill and they should advance it. Senate Bill SB 1452. Short title, Arizona Empowerment Scholarship Account Revisions. This bill was introduced by Senator Boyer. In my book, he finally has a good bill. I like this bill. Boyer, and it obviously passed the Senate, so it will be in the House Ways and Means Committee on Wednesday. And what it does, and we have to explain a little bit what the Empowerment Scholarship Account is, and I'll do that in a minute. But what it does is that it extends the eligibility of children or students to be able to participate in the program. It expands that to recipients or involved in Title I schools. And those are the poor kids, that essentially is what it amounts to. If they're participating in a Title I school, or if they are in the lunch program where they get a discount because the low income. No, it favors low income kids. It's basically what it amounts to. These empowerment scholarship accounts, they are fought tooth and nail by the teachers unions and the school boards and all of them, because if a student participates in one of these accounts, then he or she can use the money that they would get from this program and use it for either a private school or private tutoring and so on. But there's a couple of things about it. Number one is that the people who can participate in this is quite limited. And a list of the people that can participate. Okay, so if the student has a disability, okay, if with a preschool student or a K-12 student has a disability, he can or she can participate. If the parent is in the military, active duty military, or death or died in the military and killed in action. If the student has a parent which is legally blind, deaf, hard of hearing, if a student attends a D or F rated school, in other words, if they attend a school that's been totally worthless, if the student resides with a Native American, within a Native American reservation, if the student or in other words, they are limited as to, it's not a blanket thing. In other words, it's not that you can do this. It actually should be. People should be able to direct their tax money in any place they want, but it's not. This empowerment scholarship accounts are available only to certain segments of the population. What this bill does is it adds one more, actually two more types of recipients, but which are in the same category. Title I or reduced or free lunch programs. Both of those categories are people who are at the poverty level. this should be something that the Democrats and the school people should favor 100%. But it's just the opposite. You know, why they do that and still claim that they're for the people is beyond me. Now, one other thing that we have to mention about these scholarships is that when somebody is eligible to move the student from the public school to, say, a private school, 90% of the funding that was attached to that student goes with the student to the new school. 90%. What does that mean? Well, that means that the school district still keeps 10%.
More than that.
Well, no, that's the statute says they keep 10%. There's more than that, but they keep 10% by statute. So what that means is that now they have one less student, but they keep 10% of the funding associated with that student. Okay? So actually, it's good for the school up to a point. It's good for the school to have all these kids leave, because now it's like you and I, okay? Mm-hmm. And I am charging you $100 for a fee. And then you decide that you're not going to do business with me because for whatever reason you're going to go someplace else. And you take your money with you. But you don't get to take the whole $100. You get to take only $90. And I keep $10, even though I'm not doing anything for you. Mm-hmm. And that's what the schools do here.
Right, yeah.
So this is something that should be a no-brainer. Everybody should vote in favor of this. And I would like to recommend people that they contact their legislators, the members of the House Ways and Means Committee, and express their opinion in favor of this bill. And I don't know if Archie, by the way, folks, we never know if Archie is going to agree with me or not. He does a very good job of being unpredictable. So he may agree, he may disagree. So Archie, what do you think?
Jose, I've been trying awfully hard for a number of years now to try to figure out why the legislature and the school districts makes educating a student so complicated. It doesn't really have to be complicated.
I can answer that for you.
And we're making this extremely complicated. But I have to agree that with Jose, that at least we're in, Mr. Boyer is increasing the amount that they get by a whopping $40 a year. And that just is absolutely amazing to me. Understand that on an average, the state of Arizona spends through state, county, and federal dollars, they spend $10,000 a year per student. Now, according to this, the child under that empowerment scholarship, they're going to get a whopping $4,345. Whoa, where goes the rest of it, my friends? My opinion is get rid of empowerment scholarships totally. And if a student wants to go to a private school, no matter what their income is, they get that $10,000 to pay the cost. This is the entire thing is a mess. We need to have somebody get together and put a committee together to totally rewrite our education code, which consists of thousands of code sections, and none of it makes any sense. This is, to the extent that it's increasing it by $40 a year, whoopee, good, vote for it. But
Yeah.
Get rid of empowerment scholarships and everything else and give the students the money that we spend for them and let them take it wherever they want to go so that they can get a decent education because they're not getting it in a public school. We still have 40% of the students graduating from the 12th grade that cannot read or write. And that is not something that's good.
Well, yes. I would much rather have that. In fact, I would much rather have win the lottery, okay? But that's not going to happen either. What we need here is to revamp the whole system. However, under the current positions, under the current situations, there's no way that we're going to do that. So what this bill does is that it provides a little bit of an improvement because it adds another category to those people that are eligible for the Empowerment Scholarship account. Maybe next year we can add someone else. We have, by the way, in the past, and I believe, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, we had a bill in the legislature that would have made the Empowerment Scholarship account available to everyone, not just certain kids. But that failed miserably, okay? So I would like to see that happen, but it's not going to happen, not under the political atmosphere that we have in Arizona today. So this bill is not perfect, but it's a tiny step in the right direction, and I'm in favor of it 100%. Senate Bill SCR 1024. Short title, Initiative, Tax Increases, Vote Requirement. Oh boy, this is, it was introduced by Senator Peterson, and it's going to be heard in the House Ways and Means Committee on Wednesday. This bill, actually, what it is, it's SCR, and which stands for Senate Concurrent Resolution. We've mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. Whenever you have one of these concurrent resolutions, what it means is one of two things. Either it's a do-nothing bill, just just a little indicating a dream, or being in favor of this, that, or the other, or it would be a bill that, if passed, instead of going to the governor for a signature, it goes to the people for a vote. And that's exactly what's happening here. If this bill passes both chambers, it goes to the voters to vote it up or down. What it does is that it says very simply that in order to have a tax increase via an initiative or whatever, anything that the voters are involved in, it has to pass by a 2/3 majority. In other words, you need a supermajority to pass that. Now, before people start talking about, well, this is disenfranchising people, this is putting undue pressure on people, and so on and so forth, and we have the right to do this or that. Keep in mind that the state legislature cannot have a tax increase unless it passes by 2/3 majority. Okay? So what we're doing here, if this were to pass and if this were to be approved by the voters, is that you would have the same restriction for an initiative as you do for the legislature. In other words, if you want to have a tax increase, you have to have a 2/3 majority in order to do it. To me, it makes perfectly good sense. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And keep in mind that once you have a tax increase created by an initiative, and not just a tax increase, any statute that you create by initiative is there forever and ever, because the only way that it can be modified is by another initiative. The legislator cannot touch it. Nobody can touch it unless the people change it. So you have to be very careful as to what happens here. And requiring a 2/3 majority in order to increase a tax makes a lot of sense, to me anyway. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Archie agrees with me or not, but that's my position, and I'm sticking to it.
No, I agree, but I mean, under the current law, in order for an initiative or a referendum to pass, it requires 50% plus one vote. And under this, it increases that figure from 50% plus one vote to 60%. So, whether you're for it or you're against it is a matter for you to make a determination. But in my humble opinion, it's probably a pretty good idea. Yeah.
The only problem here is getting people to do it, because you via the initiative process are going to say that for tax increases you are limiting your ability, because you cannot just pass it with a simple majority. It would take 2/3, and that would be more difficult. But if you think about this in the proper manner, what's best for everyone from now on, and that this would be a good thing. So I suggest that you contact House Ways and Means Committee members, and you express your opinion in favor of SCR 1024. And this brings to a close this week's edition of Arizona Bill Watch. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you saw, Tell your friends. Tune in next week for more discussion of important and controversial bills with me, Jose Borajero, and Archie Dixon. Until then, remember, stay conservative, my friend.